Imagine receiving a message from your doctor saying, "Run, escape from your family." That's what happened to me. Now I'm on the run, trying to understand what's happening, what conspiracy this is, what harm my family could do to me. The only thing I know is that the truth behind this note could change everything in my life, so I can't trust anyone, not even my own family. If you're curious about what's going to happen, stay here, like the video, and don't miss the plot twist that's coming. Chapter 1, The Diagnosis. I was in the office, waiting like any other person. The smell of disinfectant mixed with the receptionist's light perfume, an aroma that, under normal circumstances, would even be welcoming. But that day, everything was different. The white walls and uncomfortable chairs made me feel even more out of place. The doctor called me in, and with a simple gesture, he made me sit down. His eyes were tired, as if life had demanded more from him than he could give. I looked at him, anxious, but with the confidence of someone who still didn't know what was coming. "Lucas," he began, and the way he said my name made something inside me grow enormous. He seemed to hesitate, as if he were looking for the right words. I knew at that moment that something was wrong. "We have the results. There's something concerning in your tests." Those words, simple and direct, hit me like a punch to the stomach. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt an enormous weight in my head. What did he mean by concerning? There was something much more serious at play. He spoke more, but I was in shock. My body disconnected from reality. I wanted to understand, to ask questions, but I could only hear the words that haunted me. What was really happening to my body? The doctor stood up and began looking for something in the drawer. He pulled out a piece of paper, a simple yellowed sheet, and handed it to me with a look I couldn't decipher. I looked at the paper, not knowing what to expect, and then, with hurried handwriting, he wrote something I would never forget. "Run, escape from your family." The note fell like a bomb in my hands. That simple piece of paper seemed to contain a universe of secrets. My heart raced, and the feeling of panic began to spread. Why would he give me a note with such a dark message? Why hadn't anyone warned me about this before? I left the office stunned. Every step I took away from that place seemed to take me deeper into a spiral of uncertainties. The note was still in my pocket, but I couldn't ignore it. The words reverberated in my mind: "Escape from your family." When I got home, the scene seemed almost normal. Anna was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Thomas, our son, was playing in the hallway, laughing as always. But there was something in the air, an invisible but palpable tension. I wanted to tell her what was happening, but the words wouldn't come out. How could I explain something I didn't understand myself? As I sat at the table, Anna looked at me with a gentle smile. She didn't notice the tension in my face, but I couldn't hide it. Something inside me knew that my life was about to change forever. "Is everything okay, Lucas?" she asked, her voice soft. But at that moment I wasn't sure. I hid the note in my pocket and tried to smile. "Yes, of course, just a little tired." That lie stayed between us, but in my mind the note echoed, "Run, escape." I didn't know from what, but I knew something terrible was about to happen. What else could be hidden behind those words? Chapter 2, Signs of Trouble. In the days that followed, I tried to follow my normal routine. Life seemed to continue, but something was definitely out of place. The tension between Anna and me increased. She didn't know what was happening, but I felt the weight of truth approaching. Every time she spoke, I felt a chill run down my spine. How could I hide this from her? How could I live with this weight without telling her what I knew? One morning, while we were having coffee, the conversation between us started innocently, as always. But soon Anna touched on the subject I feared. "Lucas, you're different. You're more distant." I tried to dodge. "No, just a little tired." "Don't worry," but she insisted. "No, it's not just that. You don't seem like yourself anymore." "Something's happening, Lucas. Tell me, please." I looked at her, and for a moment, I felt an immense desire to reveal everything. But something stopped me. Something that was stronger than the need, to be honest. The note, the words that haunted me, told me not to trust, to run, but what else could I do? I tried to change the subject. I'm just overwhelmed with work, you know. The pressure is intense. Anna looked at me with suspicion but didn't insist. That was the first time I realized how much she was beginning to see me differently. I was losing her without even realizing it. That night after dinner, Tomas fell asleep, as always, in his bed. Anna and I stayed in the living room, but the conversation was a minefield. I avoided looking at her, feeling guilty for keeping everything secret. "Lucas," she called, her voice lower, "I know something's not right. You're hiding something from me. I'm your wife. Trust me." I felt the pressure increase. My heart raced. But before I could respond, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I looked at Anna, hesitated, and then answered. On the other side, a raspy and distorted voice spoke. "You don't know what's coming, Lucas. You're in danger." "Your family too," I trembled. The voice disappeared, leaving me only with a frightening silence. "Who was it?" Anna asked, suspicious. I swallowed hard. "Nothing. Wrong number." She didn't seem convinced, but didn't ask anymore. I was afraid she would discover what I was trying to hide. But what I didn't know was that she already suspected something. And that made everything more unbearable. Chapter 3. The revelation I could no longer ignore the signs. What I feared was beginning to materialize. During the following days, everything became more tense. Anna distanced herself more each day. I was being consumed by something I couldn't understand, and with each new clue, the uncertainty became more bitter. That afternoon, I decided to make one last attempt. I went to the clinic again, hoping to find some explanation. But something was wrong. The reception was empty, and the air was heavy. I walked through the corridors, feeling the weight of anxiety, until I found the doctor, who seemed paler than last time. "Lucas," he said with a grave tone, "you're not understanding. You're in danger. Your family is involved in something much bigger than you imagine." His words cut like knives. "What's happening, doctor?" He looked at me, hesitant. "I can't explain everything, but you need to run. Your life is at risk, and your family's too." I felt my legs weakening. What was he saying? But before I could react, he handed me another note with the same words. "Run, escape from your family." Fear settled in for good. I knew there was something very wrong. Something was chasing me, and I didn't know how to escape. At that moment, the truth was no longer an option. I needed to act, and I knew that by doing this, my life and Anna's would never be the same again. I turned and left hurriedly, but looking back, I saw the doctor disappearing through the back door. There was something much darker at play. I didn't know what to do with this new truth, but I knew I had to run. Chapter 4. Lucas's secret eye was at home, but I didn't feel like I was there. The environment, the soft light from the kitchen, the sound of the clock on the wall, everything seemed to be in slow motion. As if I were outside my body, just observing the scene. Anna was in the living room, organizing some things while Thomas played. I knew they couldn't see what was happening inside me. The doctor's words still hammered in my head. "Your family is involved in something much bigger than you imagine." I wanted to understand, wanted to explode with so many questions, but there was something inside me that told me to stay away. Something was pulling me away from them, to a place where I would have to deal with this truth alone. But what was this truth? I found myself watching Anna from afar. Every movement of hers seemed unreal. She smiled, but her eyes didn't shine like before. The conversations that once flowed easily now became something forced, almost as if words were missing. And as much as I wanted to share them, I couldn't. I needed to protect her, even if it meant living with a secret. Night fell, and the silence inside the house was heavy. Tomas had already gone to sleep, and Anna was on the sofa looking at her phone. I sat next to her, trying to seem normal, but the words from the note consumed me. "Lucas, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice low, almost like a whisper. I looked at her, trying to hide the turmoil that was going on inside me. I couldn't find words. I just mumbled a yes. Her gaze deepened, as if trying to see beyond my facade. I tried to change the subject, talk about the day, something simple. But I couldn't. I was broken, and this secret was destroying everything that remained between us. As the days passed, I began to realize I was changing. Before, my life had been simple. A quiet routine with daily challenges like any other. But now everything seemed questionable. Even my identity was being torn apart. Who was I before? What did I know about my own family? What was happening to them? I remembered a moment many years before, when Anna and I were just two young people in love, dreaming about the future. We were lying on the grass in a park in San Diego, talking about how life would be easy. There were no secrets between us at that time. There was no wall erected between our souls. Today it seemed like I had lost that Lucas. He was buried under the lie of the present. In my thoughts I saw flashes of everything our life could have been. Anna smiling at me, Tomas running through the yard. I remembered how time passed quickly and how often we took all of this for granted. But I could no longer be that man. That Lucas no longer existed. The present Lucas was running from something, fleeing from something, or someone. That night I went to Tomas's room. He was sleeping deeply, with the blanket wrapped around his body. The sound of his calm and serene breathing made me stop for a moment. He was my reason for everything, my motivation. But even so, I knew I had to do something. I could no longer hide. I needed to discover what was happening. What was so dangerous about my family that I needed to escape? I decided that the next day I would take action. I went to the office, searched on my computer, and found some old records that were stored in the email inbox. An email from my mother years ago, talking about a secret organization, something related to my father's work. She mentioned something about a debt he had never paid, a very large debt. I read the words several times until something made sense. That debt wasn't just financial. It was more. It was a bond. Something that connected our family to something much bigger and much more dangerous than I could imagine. But what exactly did this mean? With my mind full of questions, I decided I needed to know the truth, and I would do it alone. I knew I couldn't involve Anna yet. She wouldn't understand. And more importantly, I didn't want her to be part of this. She was outside of this, away from this madness. The next day I prepared myself. Fear took hold of me, but the urgency was greater. I went to the clinic where it all began. I arrived earlier, even before they opened, with the intention of discovering more about what was happening. I needed to find the doctor, or someone who knew something more. When the door opened, a chill ran through me. It was the receptionist, the same one as before. But she looked at me differently, with a furtive look that made me question if she knew what I was there to do. "Hello, Lucas," she said, trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. "How can I help you?" I looked at her, not knowing what to answer immediately. "I'm looking for the doctor. I need to talk to him." She hesitated, almost as if she were deciding whether she could let me in. Then she spoke in a low voice. "He's not here, but I can help you with whatever you need." But I knew she knew something she wasn't telling me. I need to know the truth. "What's happening to my family?" I asked, my voice firm but trembling. "What's happening to my father? What did he do?" She looked around, and before she could answer, the door slammed shut and the receptionist disappeared from my sight. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I was closer to discovering the truth. What my family had done, what my father had done, was about to destroy me. And I wasn't prepared for what I would find. But I knew one thing. From that moment on, there was no turning back. I was in a race against time, and I would never be the same again. Chapter 5. The pressure begins to tighten. The feeling of being in a board game, where I was just a piece being moved by forces beyond my control, was getting stronger. I had the impression I was running in circles, as if I were fleeing, but at the same time being drawn back to the center of the labyrinth. The answers I sought were beginning to show themselves, but each revelation left me more lost, more distrustful of everything and everyone around me. That morning, I made the decision to distance myself a bit from home. I needed space, time to think, without the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. I had decided to go to my father's office, see what he was doing behind the curtains, since he seemed to be the key to everything. The feeling of being in an abyss, where I no longer knew who to trust, consumed me with every step. But this seemed to be the only way out. When I got there, the doors were closed, as always, but the garage was open. I entered, knowing that my father never left his workshop without locking the door, much less the garage. Something was wrong. The door was ajar, and the light inside was flickering, as if it had been interrupted by something. I felt a chill down my spine. I entered cautiously, trying not to make noise. My father had always been a reserved person, and each day he became more of a shadow of the man I had known. He had always been rigid, with the idea that a man couldn't show weakness, but I knew he carried his own secrets. He never told me about his debt, about what was behind all of this. I had grown up with this shadow hanging over us, and I was beginning to understand that the debt he had wasn't just financial. Something heavier was unfolding, something he had decided to keep me away from. The garage was silent except for the sound of wind hitting the windows. I went to the back of the room and began looking for any clue. That's when I found a file. It was a large black envelope with a government seal. I took the envelope and opened it, feeling the weight of what I was doing. Inside there was a set of documents that seemed much more than just financial records. They were full of coded words, names, and dates that didn't make sense to me. But there was one name that stood out: Callimore. I didn't know what it meant, but it was obvious that this was important. It was a key, a clue that would lead me to something much bigger than I could imagine. How was my father involved in this? What did he have to do with all of this? I needed to find out more, and suddenly I realized I couldn't do this alone. I couldn't carry this weight on my back alone. I left the garage, still with the envelope in hand, and looked around. The sky was gray, the cold wind blowing against my face. I felt weak, as if I were about to fall into an abyss from which I couldn't escape. But I knew I had to continue. I had no other choice. My family was involved in something much more dangerous than I imagined, and I was the only person who could do something about it. I returned home, but upon entering, the atmosphere was tense. Anna looked at me with a worried look. "Lucas, are you okay? Where were you?" I took a deep breath. "I just went for a walk." I needed some time to think. She didn't seem convinced. "Lucas, what's happening?" "I know you're hiding something from me. We can't continue like this." I knew she was right, but I couldn't tell her what was happening. Not yet. She wasn't ready to hear the truth, and I also didn't know how I would begin to explain all of that. My heart was tight, and the pressure on my shoulders seemed to increase every second. I knew I could no longer lie, but at the same time I felt I was being pushed to a thin line. A line between truth and lies, between right and wrong. And I didn't know how long I could continue pretending that nothing was happening. Deep down, I knew my life was about to change in a way I could no longer control. I could no longer pretend everything was fine. Whatever was unfolding was about to become real. Chapter 6. The plan begins to take shape. It was impossible to continue in that state of uncertainty. I knew that to unravel what was happening, I needed to do something more. The clues were there, scattered everywhere, but I still couldn't put all the pieces of the puzzle together. The organization, Callimore, the mysterious note, everything connected in a way I couldn't understand. But something was pushing me to action. I could no longer wait for answers to fall from the sky. I needed to act. The fear of losing my family, of losing control over my own life, gave me strength to take the next step. I began meeting with Gabriel, my childhood friend, who seemed to know more than he was willing to tell. When I found him, he seemed nervous. I knew something was wrong. The way he looked at me when he approached only confirmed what I already feared. He knew more than I thought. "Lucas, you have no idea what's happening, do you?" he asked with a serious look. "You're getting into something you can't control." "I need to know, Gabriel. I can't live with this anymore. My family is involved in something very big, and I'm the only person who can do something." He took a deep breath, looking around as if afraid of being heard. "Calimore is a secret organization, Lucas. They control everything, and your family is right in the middle of it. I tried to warn you, but you weren't ready to hear." I looked at him, feeling the weight of the words. What do they want from my family? What do they want from me? Gabriel hesitated before speaking, as if deciding whether he should reveal more. "They want to control your life, Lucas, and they won't stop until they succeed." The chill down my spine intensified. I was sinking even deeper into an ocean of lies and secrets, and I no longer knew how to swim. I needed answers. I needed to act, and somehow I felt I was closer to the truth than ever. I was at home, sitting at the kitchen table, staring fixedly at the coffee cup in front of me, which was already cold. The soft morning light entered through the window, illuminating the house, but there was no more warmth in it. The atmosphere was tense. Anna moved around the house doing her tasks, but the atmosphere was charged. With every step I could feel the weight of the secret that was consuming my mind. The truth about my family, about everything that was happening, suffocated me. But at the same time, something inside me was forming, a sense of urgency. I needed to act. The night before, I had searched for more clues, more answers. The envelope I found in the garage with the government seal, the name Calimore, all of this led me to a point of no return. I was in the middle of something big, something dangerous, and my only option now was to discover everything, even if it meant facing the ghosts of my past. I needed to understand Calimore's connection to my family, to my father, to the shadows that had always been in our life. But there was a problem. I was alone. With every step I took, I realized I was distancing myself even more from the only person I'd always trusted, Anna. She noticed the change in me. Every look, every word I exchanged with her seemed disconnected, as if an invisible wall had been erected between us. I wanted to tell her, but I knew she wouldn't understand. How could I explain something I still couldn't fully understand? I knew I needed help, and there was no one more trustworthy than Gabriel. Gabriel and I had been childhood friends. We grew up together in San Diego, sharing secrets, laughter, and dreams of the future. But over the years, our lives took different paths. I married Anna, had a son, and settled down. Gabriel followed other paths, but was always around when I needed him. He knew more than I was willing to admit, and at that moment I knew I couldn't continue alone. I picked up the phone and called him. The sound of his footsteps in the background indicated he was moving. He had always been like that, restless, as if always on alert. When he answered, his voice sounded a bit tired. "Lucas," he said with a grave tone, "you finally decided to look for me, huh? I need help, Gabriel. Something's happening to my family, to my father, and I can't do this alone." He sighed on the other end of the line. I knew what I was asking wasn't simple. "I already tried to warn you. You don't understand what's happening, Lucas. You can't see what's right in front of you." I took a deep breath. I know something's not right, but now it's too late to ignore. I need answers. There was a pause. I knew Gabriel was trying to find the right words, or perhaps seeking courage to say what really needed to be said. He finally spoke with a tone of someone delivering something very heavy. Callamore, Lucas. That's what we're talking about. Your family is involved in this, and you have no idea of the size of the network you're getting into. I froze. Gabriel's words were like an electric shock. Callamore. I had heard this name in my father's file, but now it became real, more dangerous and closer than I could imagine. What is Callamore? I asked, my voice tense. Gabriel hesitated before answering. It's a secret organization. They control many things, Lucas. People, companies, even governments. They are the shadow behind everything you know, and your family has a debt to them. A debt too big to be ignored. And I'll tell you what scared me most. They know who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. There's no way out anymore. They're going to get you, and your family will be dragged into this. Gabriel's words echoed inside me, and I felt the ground crumbling under my feet. How did my father get involved with something like this? And what had he done that put us at risk? I don't know what to do, Gabriel. I'm lost, I said, anguish taking over me. There was a reason I warned you. It's not just about money, Lucas. They have something much stronger than that. They control everything, and they'll destroy anyone who tries to oppose them. They have eyes everywhere. The only way out of this is to run. I looked around, feeling the weight of the situation. Everything I knew up to that moment seemed to fall apart like a house of cards. I was dealing with something much bigger than I imagined, and fear was beginning to infiltrate every thought. I can't just run away, Gabriel. I have to do something. I need to know the truth. What do they want? What's happening to my father? And to my mother? Why didn't they tell me anything? I know what you're thinking, and I understand. But you can't do this alone. The truth is somewhere in the shadows, Lucas, and you need someone to help you find it. Then help me, I said, my voice firm, determined. Show me what I need to do. Gabriel paused. I could hear the sound of objects being moved in the background, and the tension on the line was palpable. He finally spoke, with a tone that seemed like someone who had made an important decision. I'll help you, but we have to be quick. We can't let Callamore discover what we're doing. There are more people involved, and if we don't act now, we won't have more chances. I didn't know what to expect, but the relief of not being alone was palpable. Now, with Gabriel's help, I had a chance to understand what was happening and to discover how to protect my family. The plan began to take shape, but I knew the path ahead would be risky and full of dangers. We'll meet tomorrow. At 10 a.m., I'll send you the address, Gabriel said, ending the call. I looked at the phone still in my hand and took a deep breath. A sense of urgency took over me. The pieces were beginning to fit together, but there were still many gaps. What I knew now was that I was ready to face whatever was necessary. Callamore, the secret organization, my family. Everything was becoming a complicated and dangerous web, but I could no longer turn back. At that moment, I knew that whatever was going to happen from there would be the biggest fight of my life. Chapter 7. The confrontation dawn came faster than I expected. I was standing on the house's porch, looking at the horizon, where the sunlight was beginning to infiltrate the quiet streets of San Diego. Everything seemed normal, but I knew it wasn't. Inside me, panic was growing, even though I tried to disguise it. The meeting with Gabriel was scheduled for 10 a.m., and I knew that would be the decision that would change everything. There was no turning back. Whatever happened from there, I would have to face it. The phone vibrated in my hand. A message from Gabriel. We meet at 10 a.m. as agreed. Don't tell anyone. Don't trust anyone. We're going to show you everything. I took a deep breath, putting the phone in my pocket. The tension was consuming me. Anna had already left for work, and Tomas was at school. I had the whole day, but my internal clock seemed to be accelerating. With every minute that passed, the anxiety only increased. Gabriel sent me an address. I went to the location, an industrial area away from the city. With every kilometer traveled, the feeling of entering unknown territory intensified. I knew this was the last moment of normalcy, before my life took an irreversible turn. I needed answers. I needed to understand what my family had to do with all of this. I arrived at the designated location. It was an abandoned warehouse in the middle of a quiet neighborhood. The sound of my footsteps echoed through the deserted street as I approached the entrance. The door was ajar, as if waiting for me. I entered, feeling the pressure increase, and my heart was beating so hard it seemed to come out of my mouth. The room was poorly lit, with a weak and cold light coming from an old lamp in the corner. Gabriel was there waiting. "Lucas," he said with a grave tone, as if he already knew what was going through my head. "Are you ready to hear the truth?" I approached him, trying to disguise my nervousness. "I don't know if I'm ready, Gabriel, but I have no choice." Gabriel turned to a computer on a table in the corner. He clicked a few times, and then the screen displayed a series of images and documents. "What you're going to see now will change everything. But you need to understand that once you enter this, there's no way out." I approached, feeling my stomach turn. The first image on the screen was of a man I didn't recognize. But next to him, in bold letters, was the name Callimore. I frowned, trying to understand what that meant. Gabriel continued, pointing to the screen. "This man is Victor Duran, one of Callimore's main leaders. He controls a good part of our city, but not only that. He has influence in various areas of government and economy. Your family, Lucas, has a debt to him." The shock was immediate. I felt the ground open under my feet. "My father. He owes something to Callimore?" Gabriel nodded. "Yes, he was part of this, but never told you. Callimore demands loyalty, and when you enter, there's no way out. They control everything. And you're more involved than you think." That revelation was like a bomb, and with every word Gabriel said, the anguish intensified. I knew my life was about to turn upside down. Everything I knew was about to disappear. "But what does Callimore want from me?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Why now? Why after all these years?" Gabriel took a deep breath, as if preparing to tell me the worst. "They know you're getting close to the truth. Your family made a deal with Callimore in the past. Now they want to make sure you don't discover more. They want to eliminate you, Lucas. They want you to disappear, and there's no one left who can protect you." Those words hit me like an avalanche. I was in the middle of a nightmare I had created myself. My father, my mother, Anna, everyone was now in the middle of something much bigger than I could ever imagine. But what can I do? How can I fight against this? I asked, desperate. Gabriel looked at me with a serious expression. "You can't fight Callimore alone, Lucas. They're more powerful than anything you've ever faced. But there's a way to bring them down. I have information that can help you, but I can't do this for you. You'll need more allies." I looked at Gabriel, now understanding that he wasn't just helping me, but was preparing me for an inevitable confrontation. Whatever was coming wouldn't be easy. "How can we defeat them?" I asked. Gabriel looked at me with a determined look. "First, we need to find the documents your father hid. Only then can we bring down Callimore. They have everything controlled, Lucas, but you have what it takes to change this. You just need to believe in yourself." I looked at him, and for the first time I felt I was standing on the right path. I had a mission. Now I knew there was no more choice. Either I faced this head-on, or I would lose everything. "Let's do this," I said with a firm voice, making the decision. "Let's bring down Callimore." Gabriel nodded, the tension in the air almost palpable. "Then let's begin. There's no more time to waste." I knew that moment would be crucial. Whatever happened from there, everything would change. I was entering dangerous territory, where there were no guarantees, where loyalty was a fraction of strength. But one thing was certain. I would do whatever it took to protect my family. I knew the next step would be the hardest of all. And more importantly, there was no turning back. Callimore was about to discover that there was someone willing to face them. Chapter 8. Direct Repercussions. The sun was setting when we left the warehouse. What happened inside that place changed everything. Now with the truth revealed, There was no more room for doubt. I was at the center of a storm, and no matter how much I tried to maintain control, I knew the worst was yet to come. Gabriel led me through the deserted streets, his face serious, and I couldn't take my eyes off the images and documents we had seen. The revelation about Callimore was much more terrifying than I imagined. The secret organization my father had gotten involved with wasn't just a network of political or economic influences. It was a shadow empire that controlled everything around it. My father, my family, everyone had been pawns in this game, and I was now at the center of the battle, not knowing how to get out. "Lucas," Gabriel began as we walked, "what we saw today is just the tip of the iceberg. Callimore has people infiltrated everywhere, in every corner of this city. We can't trust anyone. They're going to come after us." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. The air was dense, and every step we took seemed riskier than the previous one. But what can we do now? How are we going to face all of this? They have more power than we imagined. Gabriel suddenly stopped and looked at me with an intensity that made me shudder. "That's what you don't understand, Lucas. We can't face them head-on. Not now. The only way to defeat them is to discover where their weak points are. We have to find the weak link in their chain and use it to our advantage." Those words stayed in my head as we continued in silence. I wanted to believe we could win, but the fear of losing everything was much greater. What would happen to Anna and Tomas if Callimore decided we already knew too much? What would happen if my family was in danger? How would I protect everyone I love? We reached a point where the streets became quieter, darker. Gabriel led me to an underground parking garage where a car was parked. When he opened the door, I saw what appeared to be a common vehicle, but with dark windows and a discreet appearance. He gestured for me to get in. "Come on, Lucas," Gabriel said. "We have a lot of work to do." As we drove through the city streets, the weight of the decision to involve my family in this secret war became increasingly real. I looked at the houses around, at the buildings I knew, and saw everything with different eyes. Now nothing was what it seemed to be. The entire city seemed to be a facade, and the real battle was happening behind it. I was at the center of it all, and there was no way to escape anymore. Gabriel began explaining the next step. He talked about infiltrations and informants, about the risks of approaching people who could be under Callimore's influence. "We need to find your father's financial records. He hid everything in a safe place, but only he knows where. The question is, Lucas, who else knew about this?" I felt increasingly powerless. "He never told me anything about this, Gabriel. How will I know where this thing is? How will I do this alone?" Gabriel sighed and looked at me with a hard look. "You're not going to do this alone. Now we're in this together, and we need to discover what your father did. And more importantly, we need to find a way to use it against Callimore." Those words marked me. I was completely involved now. Every movement, every decision was a dangerous dance. I could no longer make false steps. I knew that if I did, I would lose everything. But if I didn't, I would lose even more. The car stopped in front of a large building with an antiquated appearance, but with heavy security around it. The facade was simple, but the tension in the air was palpable. This was the place. I knew the answers I was looking for were there, but I also knew they were protected by a network of lies and threats. "This is the building where the records are kept. Lucas, if we want to find something, we have to get in without being noticed," Gabriel said, his voice firm. I agreed in silence, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. The building was tall, with several closed windows, and the entrance seemed to be watched by cameras. I looked at Gabriel, who was trying to stay calm, but I knew he was nervous too. The risk was everywhere. Gabriel took a key from his pocket and used it to unlock a side door. The entrance was discreet, without drawing attention, and contrary to what I expected, the security inside seemed looser than at the front. This only made me think about how Callimore had ramifications on all sides. Nothing was what it seemed to be. We entered stealthily, guiding me up the stairs to the lower level. The walls were empty, but I could feel something was wrong. The silence was oppressive, and the steps on our feet echoed through the darkness. Deep down, I knew Callimore was close to finding us, that at any moment something could go wrong. Finally, we reached a door with a security code. Gabriel used a master key, and with a click, the door opened. Inside was a digital file, a kind of safe. "Here are the records," Gabriel said as he began working on the machine. What he did next made me hold my breath. The information that appeared on the screen showed something I never imagined. They weren't just financial records. They were contracts, agreements, and names of people from within the government, police, and companies. Callimore had their hands in everything. I looked at Gabriel with wide eyes. How is this possible? They control everything, don't they? He nodded. Yes, and now, Lucas, you have a decision to make. Are we going to expose this to the world or continue fighting them in secret? The dilemma was before me. Exposing Callimore meant going against everything we knew. But staying silent meant allowing them to continue controlling our lives. I could no longer be a piece in this game. I needed to act. Let's expose them, I said firmly, knowing that from that moment on everything would change. Chapter 9, Consequences and Transformation. The decision was made. There was no more room for hesitation. Whatever happened from that moment on, I had to face it. Not just for me, but for my family, for Anna and Thomas. I knew that exposing Callimore wouldn't be easy, but it was the only way to end the threat that hung over us. With the documents in hand, Gabriel and I devised a plan. We knew we couldn't act precipitously. Callimore had eyes everywhere. From the moment we decided to expose the organization, our lives would be at risk. But something inside me ignited. I was no longer afraid. I was furious. Gabriel took me to a safe place where we began digitizing the documents and preparing the evidence. Every name, every signature, every transaction was a piece that assembled the puzzle. Everything was there in our hands. The corruption, the control, the manipulation. Callimore wasn't just controlling San Diego. They were controlling the country. And the truth needed to be revealed. But with every step we took, the tension increased. The risk of being discovered was around every corner. I felt that at any moment, someone could appear and put an end to everything. But what I didn't know was that Callimore had already begun to move. They knew someone was getting close to the truth. And in a game like that, those who play against Callimore have no chance of coming out unscathed. That night, while Gabriel worked on the files, I couldn't sleep. Anxiety consumed me. My mind was spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. I thought about Anna, about Thomas, and how all of this would affect them. I was about to destroy an organization that for years operated in the shadows, and now they were about to discover that someone had crossed their line. Gabriel's phone rang. I saw him look at the screen, his expression becoming grave. He answered quickly, and soon his voice became lower. I approached, trying to understand what was happening. Yes? Gabriel spoke, listening from the other side. I could see the tension on his face. He hung up the call and looked at me with a somber look. Callimore knows we're getting close. They're going to act. I felt the weight of those words. What do we do now? Now the only thing we can do is expose everything. We can't let them catch us. The adrenaline rose in my body. There was no more time to waste. The truth was about to be revealed, and there was no way to hide what we knew anymore. Gabriel quickly put together a plan to launch the evidence online to ensure the truth would be heard by everyone. This meant we couldn't go back. I looked at him and saw how much this was affecting us. Gabriel was more tense than ever, and I could perceive how worried he was. We both knew that if we failed, the consequences would be fatal. Callimore doesn't forgive mistakes. The clock was ticking. The time we had was getting shorter and shorter. We decided that the best way to do this would be to spread the information so they couldn't locate us quickly. The internet would be our ally. but also our greatest threat. I was afraid of what could happen to our family, to Anna and Tomas if Kalimor decided to act. I didn't know how far the organization was willing to go. While Gabriel worked on the system settings, so the information would be transmitted without traces, I couldn't avoid the feeling that something was about to go wrong. I wanted to call Anna, tell her everything, but I knew that would put her at risk. I needed to protect her. I couldn't put everything at stake now. As much as I wanted to be honest, the truth was that we were playing a dangerous game. "Everything's ready," Gabriel said with a tense voice. "The time to expose Kalimor has come." I took a deep breath and, without thinking twice, accessed the website where the information would be published. It was a secure, encrypted site, and the post was ready to be sent. I looked at Gabriel, who gave me a confirming look. I pressed send. It was a crucial moment. The world would now know what Kalimor did behind the curtains. The organization would no longer have control. But I also didn't know that by doing this, what I was doing was just the beginning of something much bigger. Gabriel's phone rang again. He looked at the screen and, without saying a word, threw the phone on the table. I knew that when someone from Kalimor started to react, there would be no turning back. "Now let's wait for their response," Gabriel said, with an expression that said everything, for they knew someone was after them. And they were angry. The war had begun. Chapter 10. The final battle. Kalimor's response came faster than we imagined. At 3 a.m., Gabriel and I were in the small room where we had made the preparations. Gabriel's phone rang and his face went pale. Whatever it wasn't good. "It's now," he said with a tense voice. "They know. They found us." The sound of a loud knock on the door made us freeze. Fear was palpable. They were coming, and we had no more time to hide. I felt adrenaline take over me. The moment to act was now. I looked at Gabriel. "What do we do? How are we going to get out of this?" He looked at me, his face grave. "You have to go, Lucas, and you have to go now. There's no more time." "They won't stop." Gabriel began putting the evidence on a hard drive, trying to transfer everything as quickly as possible. I knew what he was trying to do. He was creating a way to ensure that if something happened to us, the information would survive. If they didn't catch us, the truth could be exposed in another way. The knock on the door was followed by shouts. I knew they were here. They knew exactly where we were. I had no more choice. I needed to run. I looked at Gabriel one last time. "You're going to be okay, right?" He smiled, although it was a forced smile. "I will, just go. Do what you need to do." I ran out the back door, feeling my heart beat in my chest like a drum. I was on the run, but more than that, I was fighting for my life and for my family's life. The confrontation with Kalimor was no longer an option. Now I was ready for the final battle. The sound of Gabriel's phone cut through the silence of dawn. The urgent ring seemed to be pulsing in the air, anticipating something that was about to happen. I was sitting, observing the information we had spread about Kalimor, still in shock with everything we had discovered. Whatever came next, I knew there was no turning back. The war had begun, and now it was a matter of survival. Gabriel looked at the phone and, before answering, made a long pause. When he finally picked up the device, his expression changed instantly. Fear was evident in his eyes. He hung up the phone without saying a word, and the silence that followed was deafening. "They know," he said, his voice low and tense. I stood up immediately, feeling the weight of those words. "What do you mean, they know?" "Kalimor. They know what we did. They found us." I didn't need more explanations. Fear spread quickly inside me. I knew what this meant. I was at the center of the storm, and now all that remained was how to face it. The knock on the door was strong and fast. My muscles contracted. It was the sound of someone coming to take away what we had achieved. Whatever happened from that moment on, the worst was already there. I looked at Gabriel, trying to find some answer in his face, but He was as tense as I was. "They arrived," he said, his voice now firm. "We don't have time." Panic began to spread inside me, but at the same time an unknown force took over. I was about to face something I couldn't control, but I had to try. I could no longer run. I was no longer a spectator of this story. I was the story, and now, I asked, my voice failing a little. "What do we do?" Gabriel began taking the hard drive with the evidence we had collected. He was desperately trying to make one last transfer. He knew that if they caught us, everything we knew and everything we had done up to that point would be erased. Callimore wouldn't leave any evidence. "You need to leave now," he said without looking at me. His voice was cold, but there was something in his eyes that showed the gravity of the situation. "I can't protect you anymore, Lucas, not here." I looked at him, feeling a pang of guilt. I didn't want to leave him, but I knew that if I stayed, we would put everything at risk. Gabriel was doing what he could, but the final battle was beyond the reach of any of us. The only thing I could do was run. "And you?" I asked, trying to hide the panic that was beginning to form inside me. "What are you going to do?" Gabriel didn't answer. He just raised his head, looked at me and made a gesture with his hand as if dismissing me. I knew what he meant. He would do his best to protect the evidence, but soon the fight would be between us and Callimore. There was no way out anymore. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything that was about to happen. The door opened slowly. I knew that if I didn't leave now, it would be too late. So I ran to the back exit without looking back. There was no time. Adrenaline took over me. My body moved automatically, driven by the need to escape. Callimore knew who I was. They knew what I was trying to do. And as much as I wanted to fight, I knew my chances were minimal. When I passed through the door, the night wind hit me hard. It was the only sound I could hear at the moment. The rest of the world seemed to have disappeared, ceased to exist. Just me, the deserted streets, and the imminent pursuit. I was running for my life, but also for my family's life. While I ran through the empty streets of San Diego, fear consumed me. I had no idea what would come next, but I knew Callimore wouldn't give up. They were after me, and there were no more rules. The mission that began with the intention of protecting my family now became a fight for survival. The only thing I knew was that if I stopped now, everything would have been in vain. I hid in an alley, trying to find a way to get out of sight. The sound of my footsteps echoed in the deserted street, and fear seemed to be in every corner. But there was something more, something that made me realize that despite all the terror, I was in control. They didn't know everything. They didn't know where I was going or where I was running to. I still had a chance. That's when I realized that deep down Callimore didn't expect me to have the courage to go all the way. They were used to dominating, to controlling. They weren't ready for someone who would challenge the empire they had built. I didn't know how, but I would win. The final battle was just beginning. Did you like the story so far? Then like, subscribe to the channel and comment below. What would you do if you were in Lucas's place? Would you also fight against an organization like Callimore? Or would you run to protect your family? Share your thoughts with us.